Hello and welcome to Football 301. I'm your host, Nate Tice. Very fun show for you today. We're doing a little hard right turn from free agency because that's how the NFL works, free agency and the draft are in unison. We have to focus on both. We have to focus on all these new team additions. They just happen through different avenues. We also got the trade market that's been booming apparently the last couple of weeks. But today, we are going to preview the draft prospects, the running back prospects, and the tight end prospects for this upcoming draft. Two loaded classes, at least in my eyes. And to maybe get some more eyeballs on these two position groups is PFF's draft expert, my friend, Trevor Sikkema. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Football 301, Trevor. Good to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Nate. Appreciate you having me on the show. I'm excited about this one. I'm excited about the topic because these are two positions that this year, there is no shortage of guys to geek out about for a lot of different reasons. So honestly, I highly respect how you watch a lot of these guys too. So when they were like, hey, you want to come on the show? I was like, yeah, selfishly, I get to listen to Nate talk about these prospects. Sure, that's actually sounds good to me. So I'm excited about this one, buddy.
No, I think our producers are like, no. It's just, they don't need to hear any more words from me. No, but that's why, I mean, a couple months ago, Super Bowl week, we talked QBs right after the Senior Bowl. So that was a lot of fun. I know I'm like, my wife can't hear me talk about Riley Leonard anymore. You know, she can't hear me bring up the 26-year-old quarterback from Louisville. You know, like she's tired of it. She can't hear, hey, this old guy can really spin it. You know, he's got some medical history, but you know, it's not because of soft tissue stuff. It's she's over it. She's over it. So it's nice to talk to some peers about maybe some of these guys and prospects and everything.
Now I feel bad because I think I specifically asked you about Riley Leonard when we were talking at the Super Bowl when we were going through our thing. So,
you did.
Yeah,
it was catnip. Yeah. It was catnip. I know. Jameson tinting. Oh, it's St. Patty's Day. Perfect timing for it, too, as well. But no, before we jump into some of those prospects, there was a couple big signings here in the NFL. Kind of a long time coming. That was the Cincinnati Bengals finally getting done with their two-star receivers. I'll call them both stars. I think that's pretty easy to say them. Jamar Chase gets 4 years, $161 million, $112 million guaranteed, making him the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. That seems to just keep one-upping each other. Myles Garrett, Justin Jefferson. Okay, now Jamar Chase getting in here. T. Higgins, his teammate, who has the same exact agent, which I thought was hilarious. Got a 4-year, $115 million deal with his first 2 years guaranteed, making him the highest paid receiver too in NFL history. Cincinnati Bengals. Matt and others here on Yahoo, Matt Harmon, will use the term carnival team, you know, a little bit about teams that maybe have a good offense, maybe some empty calories on the rest of the roster. Trevor, when you look at the Bengals, what do you think of this kind of team makeup going receiver, quarterback? I mean, obviously you pay the quarterback in Joe Burrow. That's like,
right.
Yeah, we have that. But this team makeup and maybe going receiver top heavy and what they need to do to maybe fill out the rest of the roster that maybe is now so receiver heavy.
Yeah, I mean, if I were sort of doing the team building decisions in a vacuum, I would have paid Chase and I would have traded Higgins and gotten something back for Higgins, just because there are so many times where you can draft wide receivers, not even in the first round, and get really good wide receiver 2 production. But I can understand it for the Bengals because even though there's not a lot of examples where you see like paying skill position players is really the best way to do it, it works for Cincinnati, right? And if you still think that you are in a winning window, you better keep the strengths as strong as possible. So it's sort of interesting because it's like, all right, well, you look at the struggles that they've had over the last couple of years. I know injury's been part of it. Like that goes into it. You know, it's just some slow starts. But it's also hard to look at this Bengals team. And even after this move, which I think a lot of people would tell you was correct given their current situation, it's hard to go, yeah, okay, now we can expect way more from the Bengals. Now, I think a lot of people that would believe in them and the ceiling of this team would look at the second half of last season and say, okay, well, if you give me that for all 17 games, well, now all of a sudden we're talking about a team that's probably making the playoffs, and it was a team that nobody really wanted to see last year. But when you look at now these three players being on these second massive contracts, I saw this morning on Twitter from Jason from Over the Cap, $124 million per year is now allocated in 3 guys. So that's just, and none of them play in the trenches, right? One of them's, right. I mean, playmaking at the wide receiver position is important. Obviously, the quarterback is the most important, but like Now they got to have Trey Hendrickson conversations where if you keep him and you want him to stay happy, well, then that's going to be another, like 30 plus million. So now you're talking about like near 160 million of your cap space devoted to 4 players. Mm-hmm. It's just, again, it's hard for me to say that the Bengals made the wrong moves here. Maybe paying them earlier would have been the right moves, but keeping them, I understand, because you want to keep the talent on the team. But moving forward, they're going to be a fascinating case study of having all of this cap space wrapped up in so few players, and none of them outside of maybe Hendrickson being trench players.
I know I've been trying to just divvy it up because my anecdotal comparison to this is not even just paying 2 receivers. It was just paying 1 receiver. Was when my dad was with the Vikings, they traded away Moss because Randy Moss, and their theory was in 2005 was we will rebuild him in the aggregate and also make our defense better. We'll spend the money to make our defense better. We'll take the drop off from a locked in top 5 offense. Maybe we're 12th now on offense. This is all theory. My related note, my dad got fired 10 months after this. But was recreate the wins on the offense in different means. Okay, our run game will be a little bit better. The ball will be more spread out. We already paid Dante Culpepper. But then on defense, we can spread some of the money we were going to pay Moss to be on defense. And the thing was, the discussion was have an A offense and a D defense. And now maybe we have a B offense and a B minus defense, and we can win more games. I understood that argument, maybe, but it's easier in theory. And that's why I'm saying that maybe it was too scary to go, hey, we have an A plus offense here. And we have a makeup with trust. And you see the layers that Burrow adds to this offense. It's not another offense, or there's not another really unit that could do what the Bengals do because of just the chemistry that Burrow has with his receivers, how much control Burrow has. There's some negative downsides to this, but there's also a lot of benefits to this. So that's why I think is it ideal? Like you said, they could probably have maybe nipped this earlier, a year ago, if in an ideal world. But I think they're trying to make do with what they have. And I just think that this team has so many holes on it that might as well just have some strength that we can lean on. Every week, other opponents are going to come in scared, going, oh, we got to stop Higgins, we got to stop Chase, we got to stop Burrow for 60 snaps. There's got to be benefit to that, even if it's not ideal. I'm a trench always first team building guy on top of the quarterback as always, and then pass rush as well. Like that's how my team building philosophy goes anyways. But I think I agree with you where this is just a fun experiment to watch. And I get maybe it's just too hard to take that hard right turn.
I was just going to say, like at this point in time, like they're kind of like pot committed, whether or not you like the bet that they're making, the chips are already on the table. So Absolutely. If they were to, that's why it's like, if you would have told me maybe 2 years ago, I maybe would have planned to move on from Higgins and be able to mitigate that a little bit better. But at this point in time, let's say they didn't even franchise Higgins. Like, let's say they let Higgins walk. All of a sudden, I don't really know what the Cincinnati Bengals are outside of just throwing one-on-one balls to Jamar Chase for 20 targets a game. He basically gets like the Brandon Marshall 20 targets a game treatment, but that's like every single game that he plays next year. So,
and this is why you can run with Chase Brown is because everyone's scared of the receivers. So 100%. Now you can take a lesser running back and lesser quote unquote offensive line and make them work because everyone's scared of the receivers. So it's tough. Or, you try to pivot off of it. Maybe the Jermaine Burton draft pick kind of maybe was that was the potential pivot point, and then they're just when you see Joe Burrow screaming at Jermaine Burton, right, and that was maybe their way to go, okay, now we build a pathway to get this next guy, and then they're like, oh, never mind. That was terrifying and scary, and our quarterback hates him. Apparently our rest of our team does not like him. So I know I was curious if Higgins would hit the market because I'm sure this is less than he could have gotten on an open market. That's how it kind of works. So I think it's just hard for the Bengals to pivot off of this. Yeah, it's they're an interesting team, man. They've been, my entire life has been the Cincinnati Bengals have been interesting in some way, shape, or form. You can even go back to the Achilles Smith days. So it's something interesting. Any other thoughts though on the receiver market or DB market as well? Like anything, like the corners have kind of caught up. Do you think the receiver market is maybe plateaued now? Like I'm trying to just even think who the next guys to maybe get paid. But it kind of feels like the money now is going to get spread out to other positions.
Yeah, it does feel like that. A lot of the top guys are getting paid. I will say this: a lot of people were freaking out about the J.C. Horn contract when he signed it at the beginning of the free agency period during the tampering period, and even I was sort of shocked by that. I was like, "Whoa, he's missed a lot of games due to injury, and you're giving him the highest paid cornerback contract." And then the more I thought about it, and the more I did research on it, I went, "Oh, okay." Stingley is up soon.
Yep.
Sauce Gardner is up soon. Trent McDuffie is up soon. Deron Bland is up soon. And so Carolina sort of like barely got J.C. Horn to the highest paid corner in all of football, which lasted a week before Stingley signed his extension. Yeah. But the whole point of it was to get ahead of that deal, because what they didn't want to do is let J.C. Horn have a really good year. Now Stingley signs for, because J.C. Horn's getting 25 per year average, and Stingley just signed for 30. So Sauce can say, like, I think Sauce can say, like, okay, well, I've made more Pro Bowls and like things like that. So he can go like, okay, I'm ahead of this. And then McDuffie for the Chiefs can go, okay, well, I play basically every defensive back spot that you want me to play, so I'm more versatile than those guys. So he's going to get something close to that. So I actually thought it was, like, obviously it's a bet. Obviously it's a risk with Horn, given how much time he has missed. But like, that's one where that was a very intriguing move where right off the bat you go, whoa, what are they doing? And then you go, okay, I actually don't hate this. This actually could pay out really well for them and actually look like a bargain. So that was my big takeaway of sort of those two markets.
And they had the market for, they had the cap space to sweeten that a little bit, just maybe inflate it a little bit, like, as far as how they sign Horn. I mean, shoot, now the Patrick Surtain deal looks amazing after these guys getting signed. But also everyone says, oh, the corner market's coming back. It's like, well, you need to pay players. Like it's not a coincidence that all these guys that just got paid were top 10 picks, and then McDuffie potentially is going to be a first round pick, or was a first round pick as well. You need the players to pay. It was like last year, the defensive tackles all got paid. Everyone goes, oh, defensive tackles, premium position. It's like, well, there's just a lot of good players. Like, so obviously the market's going to follow where the good players are. The dollar amount's going to follow them too.
And if there's such a gap in between, like, for example, like if there's 2 to 3 years that go by where we don't really have the defensive tackles to sign, salary cap goes up basically every year significantly. So like that, you have to, account for that sort of jump in it as well. So, yeah.
Because I was just looking it up. This is the last thing I'll leave it on. Yeah. Because the 2021 draft was Horn and Surtain, and then the year and McDuffie, I believe, too. And then the year before that was the top 10 pick corners were Jeff Okudah and CJ Henderson. So if you're wondering why corners didn't get paid, and then AJ Terrell was pick 16. So Terrell, but that's why maybe you're not seeing that bump in mark, because those were the guys that are supposed to be paid, at least in this next group. I always just think it's funny. It's like you can see where markets are going based on drafts from 3 or 4 years before.
It is so fascinating, though, because as somebody who, pays very close attention to the NFL draft and tries to sort of figure out where teams are going, you want to have a good finger on the pulse of what the NFL believes are premium positions. And I think that it's a little bit of a, an ebb and flow of like trenches are obvious, quarterbacks are obvious, but like sometimes we're in an era where receivers are getting paid a ton of money no matter what. But like sometimes it's been corners, sometimes it's been defensive tackles, sometimes it's been linebackers, sometimes and so I'm always trying to figure out, everybody tells you like follow the money, right? I can't remember where I first heard this quote, but I heard it from somebody and they're like, owners will lie with their words, but they won't lie with their money. They are not just going to, unless you're the Falcons and Kirk Cousins, I suppose. You're not just going to. You're not just going to spend a lot of money. And that's ultimately why I heard some rumblings before the draft last year. They were like, Penix and the Falcons. I'm like, there's no way. And I thought of that phrase. Thing,
but I thought day 2. I thought that meant day 2.
Right. So anyways, outside of that one example, you don't see a lot of teams smoke screen you with significant money that they will spend to a certain player. Normally, if they're spending that, they're going to have faith in that player and they're going to give him a shot. But other than that, I'm always trying to follow the money to see what NFL teams and what owners really think about premium positions in the NFL.
I'm sure, and to tie it to the draft before we go into a break, I'm sure Travis Hunter was very excited to see those numbers too. Going, okay, maybe this full-time corner thing isn't the worst thing in the world,
See?
And also, hey, market's going up, and also, hey, this also too. It's all about the player getting paid too. Like Fred Warner is going to get more money than anyone else at linebacker because how many Fred Warners are out there? It's how many of those guys are at those spots. So, shoot, if you're a Travis Hunter and you're a top 5 and potential top 5 corner that can also play a little receiver, you're going to have your own little market. You're going to have your own little Travis Hunter market. So that's just tied into probably one of the top players in this draft. I think it's pretty definitive. I was even trying to watch him today, and he was still standing out as I was trying to prep for our running back prospect discussion, which we will talk about right when we get back from this break. All right, we are back for the piece de resistance, I think. That's the 2025 running back class, which I'm pretty excited to talk to you about. I want you to paint the picture, Trevor. If you haven't checked in, you're just finally now tuning into the draft. Trevor, how would you paint this running back class if I haven't already kind of shown my hand a little bit about how much I like it?
It is, I don't know if I would say masterpiece, but it is one of those things that deserves one of those, adjacent rooms in the Louvre, like next to where, the really great paintings are, the super famous ones. Although I will say the Mona Lisa was a little bit overrated when I went to it. There were great pieces of art that were right outside the next hallway. I'm going to be honest with you. And that might be the best way to talk about this running back class. You have the stars at the very top. You have Ashton Jeanty, but then you don't have to go very far. It's not like it's Ashton Jeanty and then a bunch of day 2 guys. Like you've got players who, Omarion Hampton from North Carolina, like he's somebody who could get into the first round. I know some people think about that with Caleb Johnson and the Ohio State running backs as well, Henderson and Judkins. Like they're every single, I would say, in the cool part about this running back class, and we don't get this every year, in increments of 15 picks, you will have running backs that you could put in every bucket. First half of the first round, second half of the first round, first half of the second round, second half of the second round, and so on and so forth. And so that to me is the fun part of this running back class is throughout the entire top 100, in my opinion, no matter where you are picking, there is a running back that you can at least have the conversation about. And I think that's what makes it a lot of fun.
I agree with you. I think I'm going to end up having, as of right now, obviously a couple of guys might get tweaked, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have 11 players that might potentially make my top 100 in this class.
How many do I have? You say you have 11?
11. I think it's going to be in 10, but I think I'm going to my 11 right now. And I think you are at, I wrote it before the show.
I'm at 10.
The one that I might cut might be the one that you have cut, which is Ollie Gordon, I believe.
Oh yeah. So I don't have Ollie Gordon in my top 100. Yeah.
Yep. That would be the one other one that like I was maybe that's like, he's kind of the cutoff for me, but we can talk about him in a sec because I don't want to spoil. That's the tail end of this list. But again, he was the guy, Gordon from Oklahoma State was some people's running back too. Some one, I would even say before the year.
Going into the year.
Had a lot of production and everything, kind of fell off and everything. I don't want to ruin the fastball on Ollie Gordon because he's not even in our top 100 here. But let's start off at the top of this class. You mentioned that there's going to be a player for sure in the top half of the first round, or at least has graded that way. And I'm in agreement with you. Ashton Jeanty, running back, Boise State. You have him at 5 on your overall big board. I had him in my top 10 as well. I had him at 6. So yeah, see him right in the same tier break right there. Give me your, I wouldn't say a one-liner, maybe your 5-liner on Ashton Jeanty and why he is, I think, a consensus top 10 player, I think, on almost everybody's big board because of that type of player skill set that he has.
This is how I would describe Ashton Jeanty in an easy way that is pretty digestible for people to understand. I think it's absolute BS and disrespectful how much we are giving away the Alvin Kamara comp every single season. If a guy bounces off one shoulder tackle and gets into the end zone or catches a pass out of the backfield, or maybe if he even just has dreadlocks, somebody goes, "Oh, look, it's Alvin Kamara." The Alvin Kamara comp is right there. And I think that is disrespectful for how good Alvin Kamara was, especially when I say was, just when the Saints were in the prime of their offense, what he was to that offense. I think that comp actually fits for Ashton Jeanty. Like I genuinely think that it is that we finally have somebody that's actually worth the Alvin Kamara comp, because first and foremost, the balance through contact is there. This is somebody who is consistently bouncing off all sorts of tackles, whether it's wrap-up tackles, whether it's guys trying to lay big hits, whatever it is. His center of gravity at 5'8", 5'9" is so low. He is so powerful. The weight is distributed so well. We have two stats that I'm going to reference a lot throughout this show at PFF that I love to lean on when I evaluate the running back position, because we always have this conversation with running backs. Look at Saquon Barkley, for example, right? Saquon Barkley, he has a historic year with the Philadelphia Eagles. People go, oh, look at what the Giants gave up. He wouldn't have had that year with the Giants. He could have been the same exact player, had the same exact health, same exact talent level. He would not have done that with the New York Giants this past year. And the reason why is because offensive line is paramount to a great rushing attack. So how do you scout running backs in a way where you're not totally leaning on that caveat all the time? Well, we have two stats at PFF that I'd like to categorize when we get to do that. Missed tackles forced per attempt. Okay, that's an average of how often you are making a guy miss, whether it is agility, just straight up, juking him and not letting him tackle you, or that could also be breaking tackles. So bouncing off tackles as well. Both of those count as missed tackles forced per attempt. So we have that average, and then we have yards after contact as well, because that's independent of the offensive line. You could get hit from contact 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. You get hit at contact at the line of scrimmage. You get hit after contact at the second or third level. But how often are you getting yards after the first time you initiate contact with a defender? That's also independent of your offensive line. Ashton Jeanty in both of those categories, so damn elite. He averaged this past season over 5 yards a carry after contact. If you gave this guy the ball and he got hit at the line of scrimmage, he was getting halfway to the first down on 1st and 10 on an average. Now I know that's not exactly how it works, but that's not right. That's not. You would take a 5 yards per carry average at all, let alone after contact. So that just goes into it. And then his missed tackles forced per attempt. I've tried to contextualize this for people that don't look at it all the time with PFF or listen to PFF all the time. But the way that I would say it is, you want your NFL backs coming from college to the NFL to have an average of at least 0.20, at least 0.20, something in the 0.20s. That's what you want for an NFL caliber back. If you get into the 30s, 0.30 and above, that now you're talking about, okay, you are a pretty impactful and efficient back. Every time you touch the football, I can realistically expect you to make somebody miss almost every time, because you've got that type of playmaker mentality. If you have a 0.40 and above, 100%. If you've got a 0.40 and above, we're talking about like top tier category. Like this was Bijan Robinson when he was at Texas. This was like Trevor Etienne in his best years when he was at Clemson. Like some of the best backs, the best single season running back seasons that we have had are guys who are in that category. Ashton Jeanty, 0.41 this past season. Like it's just, it is a truly elite number, how much he is making guys miss. So that's why I have him number 5 overall. Not only that, he's a good pass protector, and he's a good receiver too. People don't realize it because he didn't really get used like it this year. He had an elite PFF receiving grade the year prior. So this is a full 3-down back, in my opinion. He gives you that benefit on passing downs that you love to sort of hold that value, and he gives you those efficiency metrics to have faith in, independent of whatever offensive line's in front of him.
No, you painted a great picture of why he's so high on the boards. Like I really like Bijan, and I would say still one of the knocks of Bijan Robinson is that he might not have that elite home run speed. It's good speed. It's just that he just doesn't. That fifth gear doesn't always get there, and you can even track this. I mean, he doesn't break 20 miles an hour as much as you would think, but he gets to that. He gets from 0 gear to 4th gear very quickly, and I think Jeanty has that same quality as Bijan, but then has that 5th gear to take it to the house. I'm glad you brought up the receiving stuff and the pass protection stuff. That's also, something that's going to make me interested in a running back. But also on top of it, he has the skill set and the explosiveness of a guy that you take in the first round. So he has the dirty work stuff as well. I compared him. I love that comparison to Kamara because just that smoothness and how he bounces off bodies and then it's able to quickly accelerate, get right back into speed even after contact. So I totally get that comparison with him. I am going with Priest Holmes for him because they have very similar builds. Yeah, very high lofty comparison here. The other one I had was Ontario Smith, the Wizinator from my old Vikings days, because they were both very talented backs. Ontario Smith would have been a first round back if he if you want to look why he needed the Wizinator, you'll know why was out of the league in 3 years. But very talented player back in the day. But same thing, just that good build, not the big height, but that good build, even if they're not the tallest guy, which doesn't matter for backs, but I have to bring it up. But that contact balance, the shiftiness, the vision to set up the hole as well. Like it's not just speed. Like that's why even like a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs had to learn how to kind of maybe throttle his speed. And now look how exceptional he is. Jeanty already shows that. So I'm with you. He's my top back as well. I think it's pretty easy. I'm excited to see where he ends up, because I think he fits in any type of run scheme as well. You brought up Amari Hampton as, I believe, you're running back 2 from North Carolina. You have him at 28 overall on your latest big board. Yep. I had him at 27. So same exact kind of spot. Give us a little 5-liner on Hampton, because I've really liked his game even last year as I studied 400 snaps of Drake May or 800 snaps of Drake May. I was like, hey, this running back's doing some stuff. But Hampton, paint a picture for him, Trevor. Why is he your running back 2? And maybe, I don't even say maybe, I think he does go in the first round pretty definitively now. How people are talking about him, how the league, I think, views him as well. But paint your picture of Amari Hampton.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember exactly where he is overall on my board. Actually, now that I'm glancing at it, I have him 28. That's too low in my opinion. I need to move him up, honestly, because like if it weren't for Ashton Jeanty, we'd be talking about this guy as an easy first round pick as well. And the reason why is because he brings everything to the table, man. Height, weight, strength, speed, balance, pass catching ability. He's got some great pass pro reps. Like, there is so much that this guy brings to the table, and we've seen it, and he's been very productive doing so over the last couple of years. The things that sort of hold me back a little bit is sometimes I feel like you talked about Jahmyr Gibbs learning when to throttle down and when to accelerate. There are times when I watched Amari Hampton and I felt like, okay, you didn't have the right blend of like patience or like explosiveness here. Like you could have judged this situation a little bit better. You could have waited for the blocker a little bit better here. Or there were other times when it was like, okay, the block set up for you, and he was still sort of like waiting for it to manifest a little bit more. Yeah. And so just a little bit of inconsistent vision there from him, but I like his skill set behind man and gap screen run blocking plays as well as zone. Like he is somebody who, let me see, he graded better in zone. He had an elite 91.8 rushing grade behind zone. And I think that's because it was less of that patience, and it was more of like, hey, let me get to my aiming point. Let me see if I'm able to hit this rushing lane. Is it able to manifest? Boom, I'm going to put my foot in the ground, and then I'm going to get upfield with a lot of momentum with me. So I like him best in his zone blocking scheme, but this is somebody who's just built really well as an NFL back. And I agree with you. I do think that when it's all said and done, he gets in the first round.
Yeah, I downhill is the term I always came back with him, was that he just gets downhill in a hurry and has size to run through those side tackles. So I'm so glad he brought up the zone gap scheme stuff, because that anecdotally, I would say he was better on zone stuff too, probably because I liked how he could run through those side tackles. It's got, I don't know, zone, like vision has become more of a gap man trait, I guess, for backs, as so many in zone. I'm still working on this, the thought, so don't quote me on it. But this is where, and I think I'm not the only one that's made this comparison with Hampton, is that he reminds me so much of Joe Mixon. Like a build, running style, best in zone. Like that is same exact kind of thing where it's like Mixon's always had okay vision, but it's not amazing. It's not extraordinary, but he's really good at planning, getting north and making that one cut, getting those 6 to 10 yards. That's what he's best on, but has enough juice to, hit some bigger runs. Just hasn't been the run environments that have really benefited from that. The Bengals run game was very much 5 yards and very siloed. And then he goes to the Texans with the worst run blocking in the NFL. So you haven't really gotten to see it highlighted. I think the most you ever did was maybe that first year Joe Burrow started, the first year he was healthy. So his second year, that was kind of the year you kind of maybe saw Mixon's best traits. It might be merging some of these years together. But with Hampton, I think it's the same kind of thing where he's a strong runner. I would think he has solid vision. It's not bad, but it's not extraordinary as far as setting up and tempoing things. But man, he can just get downhill in a hurry And he gets those. He can eat up 5 yards quickly because he's so big and he has burst and explosiveness to get downhill and fall forward.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm with you where I kind of see him like more in the zone stuff. Obviously, we have him graded kind of similarly, and yeah, I could see him going in the first round. I think our last mock that Charles and I did, we had him going to the Commanders, which might be a little too low now. But that was kind of that fit where that big back can take these touches. You want maybe a scat back with him to kind of take where he's taking 65, 70% of the load and have somebody else take the rest of the load. I think that'd be a perfect setup for him. But I'm glad you liked Hampton too. I think he's kind of becoming the consensus number 2 guy. I believe the Athletic has their consensus board, and Hampton is 31 overall on that. So he is running back 2 to the consensus. Moving on to maybe the guy that you have as your number 3 back at 52 overall on your latest big board. I actually was watching a DB this morning, but I ended up watching a little bit of this guy. Who is that running back 3 for you that you have at 52 overall? Because he is a fun player.
I have Cam Scatterbo at 52 overall as my RB3. Yeah. Now this is where things sort of get clustered, and it sort of becomes sort of like a pick your preference, right? Because there's a couple of backs that we have here that we'll talk about, like Cam Scatterbo's in this group, Quinshaw Jug is in this group, Caleb Johnson's in this group, Travion Henderson's in this group, Dylan Sampson in this group. So it kind of depends like what you want to gravitate towards. I'm a sucker for somebody who will give me literally all they have every single time they touch the football. And
you don't care about the second contract.
No, I don't. I hope he gets it. Don't get me wrong. I hope he gets a second and a third contract. I hope he's great. But like just the way that Cam Scatterbo runs is somebody and you brought up some speed when we talked about Jeanty, for example. And look, do I have speed concerns with Cam Scatterbo? Yes. I don't think that he plays super fast. Now, I think that he can play explosively, but does he have that twitch that you need to play at the NFL level? Because there's a lot of plays where you watch him where he'll hit a jump cut, or he'll see a hole. One, I love his vision, and he'll like see a hole or see a rushing lane, and he'll kind of like scoot through it a little bit, and he's able to get through the lane, but just barely. And I go, when the NFL game speeds up, do you still do that? Like, do you still have that opportunity to be able to do that? Because when it comes to the yards after contact average, very high for him. When it comes to the missed tackles forced per attempt average, again, very high for him. I believe it's 0.35 this past year. Elite rushing grade, just because it was a phenomenal year for him. And to me, going back to the long speed thing, there's just not a lot of times in the NFL where you even get the chance to break off even a 30-yard run. The NFL is too disciplined, right? I mean, like, you just don't forget the 40, 50, 60-yard home run hits that some of these backs get. I mean, it just rarely happens at the NFL level. These guys are too good. They're too disciplined. So instead, I typically gravitate towards guys that go, okay, well, give me the player that turns a 3-yard carry into a 4.5-yard carry every time. And I'm typically going to lean on that sort of a back. And so that's exactly what Scatterbo's skill set is. And so, of course, I'm a little bit worried about the play speed, although the in-game athleticism scores that we have from him over the last couple of years at PFF are actually better than you would expect. And so I sort of am leaning on that a little bit more. He had a really good vertical jump. It was the only thing that he did at the combine, but he's like, hey, I'll show you guys that I'm explosive. So he had a 39.5-inch vert, which you love to see. Obviously, he's been used as a receiver as well. He's got the body to hold up in pass protection. So to me, I have him at the front of that because I feel like Jeanty's almost a tier of his own. And then Hampton's pretty much a tier of his own, in my opinion. And then you sort of get into this big bucket of a lot of guys. And Scatterbo's just at the front of that line for me, just because of how he runs the football and how much I want players that are going to turn, again, 2.5, 3-yard carries into 4 or 5-yard carries for me more often than not. And I feel like his play style at least lends itself to that.
No, I think that was a great encapsulation of what he is. I mean, there's so many similarities to James Conner with Cam Scatterbo, not just because they both play in Arizona, but it just big back, has more burst than you would expect. Doesn't have a top end speed, but if he wants to plant his foot and get north, we just talked about this with Hampton, he can get there. Like, he's getting through that hole and rushing forward. He's not getting caught from the side by a D tackle. And also on runs like duo, which you can bounce, to the front side, he's getting the edge. Like he got the edge on some Texas athletes, like not just some poor defenders that he's playing against. Like he's getting to the edge and out racing to the corner. Is he taking it to a home run? No, but he's getting a first down on these runs, 6 to 12 yards. And those are the ones that add up. The fact that he can get to the edge against a corner, not just some slow outside linebacker from some crappy defense, but a Texas corner. Like that's significant to me. That, he's not going to be the fastest guy. He probably wouldn't when he times. He won't time great, but that's not his game. It's just that does he pass the threshold of speed? And I think he does.
Right.
I think there's just a lot that, I mean, him and Connor's a little bigger height and weight wise, but I mean, there's a lot of similarities where the vision's actually better than you expect, better athlete than you think. They're not fast. They have a weird style too, where they can run between the tackles and somehow make 3 cuts. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like they will bump in and they cut sideways and then cut sideways again and then get north and they got 7 yards. And you're like, that was so ugly, but it works. And it's because they're so strong and the guys can't grab them and pull at them. They just keep their feet. That translates because he's shown it to me that he can do it. And it's not like he's just getting a couple yards. He's getting big gains. So that's, he grew on me where I was like, oh yeah, you're kind of a full Kiro day 3 guy. And then now as I've like really studied him, like, I mean, this is the game that translates where at the very least he can share a backfield with somebody.
I did not want to like Scadaboo. Like for the longest time, people brought him up to me at the beginning of the year and they were like, you got to watch him. This dude's a stud. And I remember watching like 2 games of him and I thought the same thing. I was like, slow. He's slow. Like I don't just right off the first like couple of games, I was like, nope, I'm not even thinking about it. And then then he just kept being productive. And I go, okay, let me take a deeper dive. Let me give this guy an honest assessment. And when I did his full scouting eval, I was like, damn, he brings a lot of what I want to the running back position. He really does. Like, he's not the exact same player, but like the reason why the Rams love Kyren Williams. Kyren is not the most athletic dude in the world, but he's got good vision and he turns again 2 or 3 yard runs into 4 or 5 yard runs. And that's why the Rams love him. And that's just that's a player that I kind of think stylistically or vision of success, that's kind of where I go to with him.
Yeah, I use my baseball analogy with that. Kyren Williams, he just gets on base. He doesn't hit home runs. He just gets on base. It was blocked for 4, he gets 5. And he does it every time. He doesn't waste any touch. Where it's like, God, why'd you bounce that? God, why'd you cut there? It's like, nope, that's what it was blocked for. He got it. And that's kind of how Scadaboo is. That Connor could be like that too. Connor sometimes will bounce things where always just like, hey, okay, it worked. Okay, we'll go for that. But no, these guys. Okay, good job. All right, we'll talk about it. Hey, no one else do that. Okay, but you can get it through. But you mentioned too, and maybe this kind of wrap up the running back or kind of leads to the end of the running back discussion. You mentioned that Scadaboo kind of maybe starts this tier of like group of guys. And I agree. I completely agree with you. Scadaboo right now for me is 6 on my list. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I still I'm splitting hairs on this because I actually kind of want to pick your brain a little bit on this. Who are some of the other guys? Maybe wrap this little group up in that tier that you mentioned, and maybe who's one that you're higher on the most in this group. Scadaboo is kind of, but I think a lot of people like Scadaboo, but like that, you're probably the higher guy on that, but maybe some other guys in this group that you might be higher on that you could see. Shoot, I'd say all these guys are easy day 2 guys to me. I think we have a lot of the same names.
Yeah, I think that these guys are day 2 guys, in my opinion. Scadaboo, again, like when we talk about like this bucket, Scadaboo is one of them. I think Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, the 2 guys from Ohio State, are in this bucket as well. Those guys are a little bit frustrating to me because Henderson was good his freshman year, hurt his second year, sort of came back his third year, but he wasn't the same player. Little bit of a cold start to start this season, but then he finished the season really great. And he was like that speed back that you wanted him to be. So if you have faith in what was that college football playoff run and him down the second half of the season, then you really like what you saw. I think the same thing about Judkins. I had Quinshon Judkins as my RB1 going into this season, even barely above Ashton.
I did too.
And that's because he was sick at Ole Miss. He was unbelievable at Ole Miss.
Amazing.
And then I watched him. I did the running back scouting evals in like mid-December. So we hadn't even hit the college football playoff yet. And I'm watching Quinshon this past year from Ohio State, and I was like, dude, where's the creativity? Like, where's the yards after contact stuff? Like, it just, the whole regular season when he was at Ohio State, it just wasn't there. And then we get to the college football playoff and he's an animal again. And it was like the Ole Miss version of him. So I remember writing his scouting report, but I was very frustrated on what happened in the regular season because I felt so much of a lack of creativity that I even remember in my like bottom line scouting report, just like my quick synopsis, I say of him, he's an incredibly talented back, but if he doesn't go to the right offensive line, he might really struggle to produce in the NFL because of what I watched in the regular season. And then he does what he does in the college football playoff, and it reminds you of what he was when he was at Ole Miss. So I think that he's sort of in that conversation. He'd probably be my RB4 next. Dylan Sampson and Caleb Johnson, the other two that I would bring to the table. I love Dylan Sampson's home run speed. I love the fact that he was a big-time track guy when he was in high school, so he brings that track speed to the field. He can't keep fumbling the ball the way that he has over the last couple of years. Like, that has to get so much better. But he is a dude who I think has that legit home run ability. And then Caleb Johnson is like science guy meme, hands up, like, I don't know what to do with you here. Because
I want to hear this. I want to hear this breakdown of Caleb Johnson because he's a unique watch. Yeah.
So there are plays of Caleb Johnson and a handful of plays. I'm not just talking about a couple where I go, that's Todd Gurley. That's today's version of Todd Gurley, like who he is as a runner. I love him in outside zone. I love when you can get him towards the sideline and he could just put his foot in the ground and just take off up the field. I think for being 6'1", 225 pounds, the long speed that he has, the top speed when he gets up to it, ton of speed to power that he converts there with his momentum, can really get up the field and hit those home runs for you. I thought where there were good plays, he was inconsistent when it came to those third down abilities. So like, pass catching and pass protecting. Not that he can't do it. Obviously, he's built like somebody who I felt as though could be a nice third down player, but I didn't think that he was consistent in either of those areas. And then there were times when I just didn't love his vision between the tackles in those man and gap scheme run blocking concepts. So if you tell me that, like, if you put Caleb Johnson with the Minnesota Vikings, the San Francisco 49ers, like teams like that, where you were just able to get to the outside and run outside zone a lot, like, I'm in. Like, he would be a 1,000-yard back for you, even as a rookie. But I don't think one thing that we're doing at PFF this year, which I'm super excited about, is we're getting into more like team-centric big boards. So we're going to release team like top 100s, like for every team, like given what they need, given their styles, like all this kinds of stuff. And Caleb Johnson, to me, is going to be one that's going to have a ton of different range, because for some teams, I might go, I don't love him behind that blocking concept that they're trying to run. And in other concepts, I might go, this dude's going to be a 1,000-yard runner if they draft him as a rookie. So to me, there were just too many areas of his game where I felt like it was inconsistent, specifically in the third down, like pass, like pass game pluses. I just felt as though he was a little bit lacking in that regard. But like as a runner, like I said, there are times when I watch him and I go, this is Todd Gurley again. So there's just, I'm very indifferent about where I'm going to end up on Caleb Johnson.
Yeah, I have him and Judkins right next to each other. As kind of like running back 3-4. And I'm totally with you, is that he grew on me. He was a guy that I actually was lower on the most. And then he kind of grew on me, and I feel like I'm going to stay right here in this range where I have him the overall, like mid 40s, kind of overall my big board, somewhere around there. There's some Arian Foster there, and I think maybe it's just some zone, but they're the same size. They kind of have same speed. That's the guy that I keep watching. That's the upside that you're hoping for. But again, where Arian Foster go in the draft? Undrafted. And do you take that skill set on day two? And again, that's kind of going what the result of Arian Foster was. But again, just saying some of the limitations. He's a classic early down only back. I like this guy to take the majority share of touches, but then you need somebody else on your team to balance him out, to help him out, to do some of the dirty work stuff, to be the classic scat back, protection back. If I could get Johnson and Travion Henderson on the same team, we're golden. Great. Just get these two. We're awesome. Because Henderson, just the little one-liner, if you don't know anything about Travion Henderson, guy could take it to the house, and he's great in pass protection. Those are his,
Mhm.
and he's gonna have a role in the league for 10 years just doing those two things: big plays and pass protection. So I'm kind of with you on Johnson, where I don't love him as maybe some other people do. I kind of just like him, but I like him only for certain teams. So just exactly how you're kind of describing him. I'm glad you brought up Samson. He really grew on me. I thought he had some good vision and has the speed like you're bringing up as well. The vision was shocking to me, and I loved it. Talk about tempoing and everything. That's a guy that knows how to use his speed. Doesn't play like a smaller back. Even if he didn't have the greatest size. I think he weighed 200 flat, I think, at the combine. But he maximizes it and he plays as big as he can be. It's just you have to be realistic about what his role is going to be in the NFL. Like guys like Jahmyr Gibbs are like the cutoff of how small you can be to take a main role, and Gibbs has battled some injuries when he's had to take it, but also he shined when Montgomery was hurt. So that's the other side of it. But you always have to be realistic about the weight. So that's with him. I'm trying to gauge that, like how much I'm willing to tolerate that, because I just really like his game. If he was 5-10 pounds heavier, you'd be maybe 2 for me. But you did bring up the fumble stuff as well. I really like Judkins. How you just described everything was exactly how I felt. I had him as running back 1 going into this year. Him and Jeanty were 1-2 right next to each other. Then it was all off the Ole Miss tape. And I was like, this guy might not hit a home run, but holy crap. Talk about getting on base. Talk about hitting doubles and triples and breaking tackles and vision and size. And his 40 times at the combine exactly matched that. The miles per hour is really high after 5, 10, 20 yards, and then dipped from 20 to 40 yards. And I was like, that's exactly how he plays. He went from above average to below average on the long speed. So I'm glad you brought that guy up too, because Judkins is a good player. There's a lot of these good guys, and all these guys I see is round 2. Rob Henderson. You also had RJ Harvey from UCF. I'll admit, I'm a little lower on Harvey. That's your boy? I'm a little lower on. Let's talk about this. Okay, perfect. This is a great way to end this. I'm a little lower on Harvey than others. I view him as like maybe an early round 4, late third, round 3 guy. But give me why you love RJ Harvey at 24 years old.
So again, all right, easy. Subtle shot there at the end before you have me take over. No, I do like RJ Harvey. I think the last couple of years he's been very productive. I think we need to look at the last 3 years that he has been a contributing or starting running back in college. He has averaged that missed tackles forced per attempt average. It's been above 3 in the last 3 seasons. Okay. So consistently a player that makes you miss in a phone booth in a lot of different ways. I love the way that he approaches being a running back, wanting to make players miss. I think he's got pretty decent contact balance to him as well. I didn't think he has the greatest long speed in the world, but when he was at the combine, showing off a 4.41 40-yard dash, I was like, all right, I didn't even know if you had that in you. So now I already like you.
Yeah.
Me too. I did not think that he was going to be able to do. Now, he doesn't play with that home run speed nearly as much, but it's good and it's nice to know that you have it in you. I think he's got some soft hands in the receiving game. I have said this before. He is sort of my Bucky Irving in this class, because I had Bucky Irving as RB5 last year. And Irving was a 4th round pick, right? And he ended up being phenomenal for the Bucs. Now, I will say this, it's not a carbon copy. So I'm hesitant to say the Bucky Irving comparison because of how great he was for Tampa this past year. It's not a carbon copy thing, because I think Irving is a little bit denser in his muscles. He kind of takes contact a little bit better. And I think he dishes it out a little bit better. So I think he's a little bit stronger of a back. But both of these guys had a very high missed tackles forced per attempt average. And I think that they saw the game very similarly when it comes to setting guys up to make them miss and just try to find some open field to get some extra yards once you get to the line of scrimmage and even to the second level. So RJ Harvey is just kind of my guy, because the more I watched him, the more I gravitated towards who he was as a playmaker when the ball was in his hand. So I'm a fan of his.
Yeah, no, I saw that. We're going to probably end up having him in the same kind of tier. I just have maybe a couple of guys notched above him. He's the last guy of that group I said that I could see all going by the end of the day too. Like he's the bottom of that tier for me, but I still like him. Like that's the thing. If he was in previous classes, I'd be like, man, this guy might be running back 4. And for the fact that I have him basically running back 10, and I don't mean that as a diss. It's just, but still, I just speaks to this class. So I'm glad we got to talk a little bit of Harvey. I would say my version of that, the guy I'm higher on than others, is Devin Neal from Kansas. You have him at 93 overall. I ended up squeezing him into my top 50 just to make a little bit of a statement. I really like him. Kind of a little bit smaller version of David Montgomery. That's kind of my comparison for him. Like same tempoing runs. I talk about long speed again. He timed basically how he plays. Like almost like a 4-5-8 guy. But he had vision, catching the ball, pass protection. This is my kind of guy all the way. So my version of that is Devin Neal, as you just brought up. Harvey is my kind of guy I'm a little bit higher on than maybe others, and squeezed him in my top. I put him above Henderson just because I think his role will be a little bit more down than Henderson's will.
I think that there's so much to love about Neal's game. And this is somebody who is a legit multi-sport athlete. I mean, he committed to Kansas because Kansas was going to let him play baseball and football. And he tried it for a little bit. And then, like many other guys who try to do both, they realized, like, okay, well, doing one of these actually. Yeah.
Do you see AJ Brown talking about that? He played.
No, what did he say?
Like he was playing like because he played All-American football and baseball, or he played like the Futures game in baseball, whatever it is, like they have a classic or whatever. And he's talking about it, and he said, oh, these guys all I saw a couple guys in high school throw like 88, 90. And he goes, now every guy's thrown 96, 97. And then they're throwing a breaking ball that's 88. That's the speed of the fastball. And he goes, so the first time I went up and they had the clip playing, he goes, I said, I'm going to just swing at the first pitch I get. And he does. He like chops it down. You could tell. And he goes, that's why I decided I'm going to go catch some passes. Like, as soon as you see that one breaking ball coming at you, man, it's like, oh.
No, but I do
take on 300 pounders.
That could very well be the case. But challenging linebackers at the D1 level is an interesting, I'm going to go do that instead. But you're right, though. He approaches the game in a way that you just love the IQ, the vision. And I don't just mean as a ball carrier, like who he is as a receiver, who he is as a blocker. The multi-sport background thing, it really matters because I just think he approaches the game at a very high athletic IQ level. So Devin Neal, he is somebody who I think just because of his limited athleticism, he'll be more of that third, fourth round pick. But if you get him in the third round, I think you'll be happy with him. If you get him in the fourth round, I think it'll be a steal for you.
Yep, I think it's a good one. The other one was Damian Martinez, but I think our running back, there's a lot of running backs, guys. There's a lot. I don't know if you guys got the long story short about this class. You should be very happy if you're in a dynasty league and you need some running backs.
Yes.
Because there's a good crop coming your way. We are going to take our last break, and we're going to come back with tight ends, which is also an interesting class, but maybe not 10 guys in the top 100 like Trevor and I just had for the running backs. Okay, we are back with our last little section here. We just jumped into the running backs. We probably could have gone another hour. We didn't even talk about some of the guys that won at the combine. We didn't even talk about DJ Giddens. DJ Giddens is another fun one too.
So if I almost threw in there at the end, I know we were trying to segue into tight end, so I didn't want to take over the podcast myself. But I almost was like, also DJ Giddens, and I almost just threw him out to you. Good ball player.
Damian Martinez. And also, just all these backs are good. And how about the guy that was on top of some people's boards a year and a half ago, Donovan Edwards? Remember that name, people?
Dude, we didn't even talk about Ollie Gordon. We were going to talk about Ollie Gordon. Then we talk about Ollie Gordon.
Or we didn't talk. Is it Tutton or Tootin from Virginia Tech?
Tootin.
He still ran. Yeah, he ran Tootin ran the 40 in like 2 seconds. All right, but we're getting the tight ends. Also, a really fun and interesting class. Trevor, I'm going to let you just paint the picture of what we got with this group of guys. I believe you have 4 tight ends in your top 100 as of last writing, but I mean, they're all pretty up there, and that's more than you usually see in classes. That's a lot more day 3 guys and late round 2 guys or round 3 guys. But paint the picture of this tight end class, Trevor.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of tight ends that are, I think, taking on the identity of where the game is going. And I think that to further explain that, I'll bring up Sean Payton's quote when he was at the combine that everybody's sort of obsessed with and makes them think that they would draft Colston Loveland at number 20. He talks about having that joker position on offense, right? It's that hybrid sort of player that he's either like a tight end / slot wide receiver or, a running back who could also play in the slot type of guy. Just a middle of the field, multi-versatile type of player for you. And I think that we have seen the tight end position evolve a lot over the last really 5 to 6 years. I know that you have sort of coined the term that I love, like these power slot players, like these bigger guys that, don't exactly try to paint them or put them in the box of a regular wide receiver, but they do play those wide receiver snaps and roles. They just do it at a bigger size. And so you have some running backs that have the ability to do that from the slot as well. And when it comes to this tight end position, there's a lot of guys that can be that for you. And I think that we still see the need for teams to want to have these, true like Y inline tight end type of players. But then you have these slot F type of tight ends that are, hey, I'm just a slot receiver and that's what I do really well. Look at Brock Bowers. All right. Brock Bowers, pound for pound, a pretty nice blocker. Do you want him in line on the line of scrimmage all the time? No, probably not. But you play him in the slot and you watch what happened last year. That's pretty valuable, So you don't have to get these tight ends that necessarily play on the line of scrimmage. Is it great to have a Tyler Warren, who I'm sure we'll talk about here in a second, who could do all of that? Yeah, but you can also get really good production out of this position for guys that are a little bit lighter and just a little bit more athletic. So to me, this tight end class, as stacked as it is, sort of encapsulates the versatility that we see at the position now.
It's always going to be impossible. I mean, it's the Mike Leach line. Tight ends are great if you have them. If you got them, they're great. But you got to find the 6'5", 250-pound guy that can run, catch, and block.
I was saying this with somebody the other day. Is tight end trench people might be mad at me for this, but is tight end the most football position? You gotta be like 6'5", 250, 260, but you gotta run like a wide receiver. You gotta be able to block like an offensive lineman. And it's the more I think about it, the more
you're gonna play special teams all the time and probably have to tackle too.
100%. 100%. So the Mike Leach line is so perfect, as was so many things that Mike Leach said, where it's just yeah, sure. If you have a 6'5", 265-pound versatile athlete, I'd love to have one of those, but not everybody gets to have one because they don't come around very often.
Line them up, get them out there. Why don't we have one too? Yeah, just find the next Gronk. It'll be great. It's easy. It's. And that's why it's just so hard to grade these guys, especially coming from college, which is so spread heavy and so just RPO heavy. And there's some creativity in actually where I'm oh, that's how you hide a tight end from blocking. And you see why I'm getting into this is that I have maybe changed some of my evaluations on receiving only tight ends. Like a guy like Sam Laporta might be my best example of this, is really liked him. Really, really liked him coming out of college. But I was well, I don't think he can hold up in line. So how high would I take him? Well, if you get to the right coordinators, and I think these coordinators are getting so much better at hiding the guy, going, hey, you're going to be on the backside of this block. We're going to RPO you. We're going to put you in motion so you have a more advantageous block. You see the Rams do it a bunch, Packers do it a bunch. See more creative offenses do that. So it's kind of maybe bump some guys that I used to, and we'll talk about one in a sec, but guys that I maybe considered, oh, no, he's receiving only. So yeah, I can't take him too high. Now I'm well, now these guys are just big receivers and they get used like that. So maybe actually it's they almost a discount, because the receivers are getting paid more and getting drafted higher. So maybe you get a guy using the same role, playing the same amount of snaps. So just getting in there, because there's a couple guys that kind of applies, it's applicable to. Well, not really the first guy, because he's kind of his own unique thing. But that you have Tyler Warren as your tight end 1, 8 overall. I also have him as tight end 1. I have him at 11 overall. So same tier, more or less. But Tyler Warren, Trevor, has some of that ability to maybe be in line. What did you think, though, of maybe his combine measurements? A little shorter arms. Does that maybe inhibit you from, I don't know, has he reached as high as he can go maybe on your board? Do you have any questions with that? Or really, why do you have him as high as you do? I mean, we both do, but why do you have him as high up here? And what are his traits that make him such a, top 10 talent in this draft?
Yeah, I mean, uniqueness, I think, certainly goes into it. Again, going back to the Mike Leach quote, it's like you don't really find a lot of Tyler Warrens. And so I think that, him just being somebody who is listed at 6'5", 260 pounds, he can basically you can line him up at tight end. Now, I don't think he's like an all-world mauler type of a blocker, but I think that he is certainly good enough to hold up in line to complement the offensive line the way that you would want a tight end to, especially one that is also giving you plenty as a receiver as well. So he really is like he's a total package type of a player. Yeah, do I wish the arms were a little bit bigger? Sure. I wish he held on to his blocks a little bit longer sometimes, but there's just so much of what this guy brings to the table that you absolutely love. And, he was talking about at the combine. It's like, oh, why do you wear number 44? Well, I wear number 44 because my dad told me I needed to run like John Riggins every time I touched the ball when I was in, peewee ball. And so I just kept it with me the entire time. And it's like that mentality that he has as a player, I think just goes a long way. So, he is somebody that, you mentioned sort of having to reevaluate how you scout tight ends. I am with you 100%. And that's why this year and what I do moving forward is I actually have the tight end position broken up. And I did this with a lot of positions instead of like the standard 11 or 12 that you have. Like I think like near 20 different positions that a player can get categorized in. And for tight end, I have Y tight ends and I have F tight ends. And the reason why I have them differently isn't just to rank them a little bit differently. It's also to grade them a little bit differently. I have grading scales of, film notes that I have of certain athletic traits or production or things like that show up on film that I will weigh heavier, right? If you're somebody who I think you're going to be a power slot, a big slot type of a tight end, well, I'm not going to ding you as much if you can't block because you're not going to get drafted to do that. So why would I scout you sort of the same? And that's something that I've thought about for a while. And I really actually dove into that this year of sort of splitting those positions up. And obviously, we have on the PFF big board common positions kind of are what they are. But what I have is almost like, okay, I have tight end and then I have a subcategory of the tight end position. And I have that for a handful of positions, right? Like interior defensive line, for example. Interior defensive line, I have 3 different categories. I have nose tackle, I have 3 technique defensive tackle, and I have 3-4 defensive ends. For edge rushers, I have, are you more of a hand in the dirt 4-3 defensive end or are you a 3-4 outside linebacker? So like there's just, I want to be more practical about how I am scouting these players, knowing that every team could look at them a little bit differently. And we say all the time, like, well, if he goes to this team, he'll be great. If he goes to this team, I don't really see the fit. Well, why would I scout him as if the team that he's not a fit for is going to like him? I would really want to scout him for a team that's actually going to lean into the things that he does well. So Warren, we start out with luxury at the very top. I have him listed as a Y tight end, like an inline tight end, just because he could do it, but he scores very high at the other stuff as well. And it's not that, I have these 2 different categories for the tight end position. It's not like receiving matters so much for slot tight ends and it doesn't matter at all for inline tight ends. No, it still matters. Right. You're still asked to do it. It's just, maybe the weight of the scale is a little bit different. But Warren just brings everything to the table, in my opinion, that you would want out of a first-round tight end and somebody that can have value for you no matter what you are asking him to do.
No, and everything you're bringing up with the difference in positions and everything and roles that's how teams are graded too. I mean, I could just speak to where even with the Falcons, how they would do it is they're trying to make it more where the board is horizontal so you can compare guys through positions and everything. How do you rate a receiver that we think is slot only? Is he comparable to a guard that's limited in pass protection or a position only guard, like where they only can play guard? They can't play center, can't swing out the tackle, yada, yada. So it's always like downs affected, potential role, and then versatility gives you a bump as well. Mostly positions like line, but even a receiver, like a guy that is a slot only more valuable than a guy that's okay on the outside and the inside. Well, let's have him graded similarly. So it's is a Tyler Boyd as useful as a prime? I'm just trying to think of, this is a terrible example, Robert Woods, like something of that sort. A guy that's a Z and inside, he might be a little too good in comparison to Tyler Boyd, but you get the point here. But that's where tight ends really gets affected. And you brought up a Y is, in typical terminology parlance, is a inline tight end. A X is a receiver, a Z is a receiver, a Y is the tight end, X, Y, Z. And Y traditionally means that you are in line. That means you are attached to the formation traditionally. Now these guys move around so much more. But when you hear Trevor, I'm kind of explaining it to the listeners. But if you get what Trevor is saying with the Y, or even with myself, say Y tight end, he's a true Y. That means this guy is an inline tight end, is a traditional tight end as we picture it. He's an extended tackle who's also a receiver as well. Gronk is the epitome of a Y. That is the perfect Y. A guy that's A+ blocker and an A+ receiver. Like, you're never going to see another Gronk, like probably never, ever. And so that's where a guy is a receiving only tight end is a F. F is the term for adjuster. But F can mean fullback, can mean second tight end. It also can mean slot receiver if you're really getting into it. But it's F means receiving only. A guy that's off the ball, a guy that's lined up in the slot, guy that's in the backfield. They're the move guy, the adjuster. You might hear H as well. That's the Joe Gibbs term, using an H back. But yeah, just wanted to explain that as well, because I also think it's interesting in this year's class, because I'm with you on Warren, where he can do a lot and has potential to be in line, which gives him the bump for me. I think his blocking in line it's okay. I'll put it above average. I would say maybe coming for a prospect. Out of space when he's on the move, it's really good. And I would say the arm length is a little worrisome, because your blocking as a tight end is going to be more run blocking, where I think the arm length matters more. So that is a little bit where I might ding him like 2 spots, but it's split in hairs, when it comes and goes. But he's still going to be my tight end 1. And I'm with you. Just the versatility, creating yards after the catch is huge at any position. And the fact that you can get maybe some juice from tight end is a bonus. And I think he can do that as well. Dallas Clark's kind of been my comparison for him. And not just because they both were 44 in college, but it helps. Maybe they're both Pete Maravich fans. That was my original. Maybe not. It was Higgins. I didn't know it was Higgins, but he said that I interviewed him at the Super Bowl. Warren said that he tried to emulate his game after Jeremy Shockey, which was not the name I expected him to say. But actually, they kind of look alike, like face-wise and hair-wise. So
they kind of do, actually.
They kind of do, yeah, and they're built kind of the same too. So I know, but I don't hear a Zoom, or what's younger than Zoomer now? Is it Gen Alpha, as they call them? But I wouldn't expect to hear it. I wasn't expecting to hear a Zoomer though say Jeremy Shockey. Like, I was like, oh, well, that's okay. All right. I gave him a little props going like, hey, that's a good name to drop out there. All right. I can maybe see that a little bit. But why that whole YF discussion is so interesting with this class is at the top, because the guy that you have is tight end 2. I also have his tight end 2. I have him at 14 overall. You have him at 29 overall. The consensus has him probably somewhere in between, as most consensuses do. And that is Colston Loveland, tight end from Michigan, who, like a lot of Michigan players, had a little bit of a drop off from 2023 highs to the 2024 lows. I see Loveland more as an F tight end, a move tight end. But what do you think of him, Trevor, as your tight end 2 in this class that has some interesting names?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the split with these tight ends is very interesting, because I mentioned Warren, being that, Y tight end, but then my next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tight ends after that are all F tight ends. And then the next Y tight end that I have is Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame. And he's just outside of my top 1. Who I like still. I like
Evans. Just watch the tail end of the year. Once he's back from his injury, it's so much better than the beginning of the year. Yeah.
Anyways, Colston Loveland. He is 6'5" and a legit route runner, and it's hard, independent of position, to be 6'5" and a legitimate route runner. He's got great hands. Pound for pound, he's a pretty decent blocker. Again, like, I'm not going to put him in line, tell him to go up against base 4-3 defensive ends or anything, but like. Right. If the linebacker's coming down, he'll hold his own a little bit. I don't think he's going to blow him off the ball, but at least he'll be there. If a strong safety's coming in and they're trying to set the edge, I think he'll be able to work for you. But you're mainly going to use him as a receiver. You can use him as a slot receiver. I think you can even use him as an X receiver as well. I think he is that good of a route runner to be able to play him as a pseudo X on the outside to the sideline if you really need him to. But, definitely a down year for him, just because drop off in production for him, but just Michigan's offense overall. The passing offense wasn't nearly anything close to what it was the year prior when it was J.J. McCarthy there. The offensive line was almost completely different. The offensive output was bad. And then just overall, he went through a lot of injuries too. He was out for a good portion of this season. And so you really have to just watch the 2023 season to really appreciate Colston Loveland. And I think when you do, you see a guy who's worthy of being a first round pick because of everything that he could bring to the table as that receiving tight end type of player.
Yep. You're comparing him more to maybe slot only receivers. And I'm not saying as a diss to Loveland. I'm saying that his route running is so good and he can beat slot guys and safety types, which is what you have to show. Can you beat a DB one-on-one? Okay, we can split you out. Laporta could do that. Dalton Kincaid, still question mark a little bit how consistently he can do that. Like Loveland to me is what I think people thought Kincaid was, where people thought he was this dynamic. I think Loveland is more dynamic than Kincaid.
That's fair. I mean, I thought Kincaid was going to be dynamic coming in the NFL, and he hasn't quite been that.
Right.
So that's fair.
And I think Loveland's just maybe a little bit bigger, a little bit twitchier. And I liked Kincaid, don't get me wrong. It was just that I think that's where I can see that maybe a little bit bump in that role. And I actually, Loveland grew on me. I liked him going into the year, tight end one, everything. Kind of a little dip in the first half of the year. I think the Texas game kind of cooled me on him. And then after that, watching more of the games, I was like, oh, okay, never mind. You got some juice. You got some ball skills. And so I'm with you. I could see him. I've been mocking him going to the Seahawks a little bit and the Texans as well. Ooh. I kind of just like those fit. I know, right? Especially in the Kubiak offense in Seattle and what they're trying to do with I don't know what Seattle's trying to do overall, even though I'm like the one few guys that's not like acting like the sky is falling. But I could see him maybe being a good Shanahan tight end. Where he can be a zone blocker on the outside and do some flexibility stuff around the formation. So that's where a little fit I like for him. But no, it's basically like, it's like for Loveland, it's more like, do you like him or Emeka Ibuka better? Like, that's kind of what it comes down to. I feel like. Do you have Ibuka higher than Loveland on your big board?
I do. I think I have Ibuka top 20, I believe. Let's see.
Okay. You like him. I like him too. So don't get me wrong. But that's where you're kind of more comparing him 19. To that.
Yeah, I have Ibuka at 19. Yeah.
Okay. I think I have him like 22. So I'm like right in the same tier. But yeah, same kind of tier player and stuff. But no, Loveland's fun. Just going to be, I think it's very much more of there has to be certain fits that are better for him than others, which is always in the first round. You want your guy to be kind of scheme proof as well. Let's wrap up with the rest of the tight ends that you have in your top 100. I believe you probably have, I don't even have to look. I can guess probably two of them. Elijah Arroyo from Miami and Mason Taylor from LSU. All right. I know two of them, but I don't know if you're going to have any more up there. But yeah, let's maybe just wrap up the show with these couple guys because I think they're really fun. I talked about Arroyo a little bit last week at the end of the show, but maybe the next two tight ends in this class, or maybe anyone else you can see sneaking up in the top 100.
Yeah, I mean, Arroyo is fun, like you mentioned. My favorite part about the offseason for him is that he showed up at the Senior Bowl 6'5", 250. Like, I genuinely thought that the way that he played, I was like, okay, he's going to measure in at like 235, 238, something. And I'm going to have to come to grips with the fact that he's below 240 pounds. And he absolutely wasn't. So not only is he big enough to play the tight end position the way that you want to, he's a good enough receiver. And he showcased that in Mobile. So I like him a lot. I have him at 58 in my top 60. I like Mason Taylor. I feel like I'm a little bit lower on Mason Taylor than some other people are. Like, I think he is a good receiving tight end, but I think he is. The combine perfectly encapsulated this. I think he's a smooth athlete. I don't think he's a great athlete. And I don't really think he's an inline guy. So some people who are projecting Mason Taylor to be like this early second round pick, it's like, okay, that's just a little rich for me. I would like him. If you picked him late second, it'd be fine. I like him more in the third round, getting him as that receiving tight end, just because I don't know how much of a difference-making athlete he's going to be. I think he's going to be smooth. He's going to be able to create some catching windows and some throwing windows, but I do feel as though he might have to be a contested catch type of a guy a lot in the NFL. Not saying that he can't, but so that's my assessment there. The other two guys, one guy I have firmly into my top 100. The other guy is just sneaking in. Terrence Ferguson from Oregon. I have it 76. He is another guy who built very well, 6'5", 250 pounds. I think he's a pretty good all-around athlete. He was the best athlete that we had of any of the guys that tested at the combine. So I love to see that. He showcased that, in my opinion, when he was at the Senior Bowl as well. I think he would have had a much more productive year this season had, Tez Johnson and Evan Stewart and Trayshawn Holden not been the wide receiver spots. And I think Oregon's offense just really wanted to emphasize their wide receivers more. That was just where they leaned. Yes. More naturally. They just wanted to spread it out a lot more. But I think Ferguson's best days are as a pro. So I do like him a decent amount. And then Harold Fannin Jr. is at 99. So he's barely sneaking into my top 100 there. Like Fannin, I just don't know.
Fannin starts the exact same way.
I just don't know. Like, you hope he's Jonnu Smith, right? Yeah. I mean, like that's what you hope. He's just this sort of like smaller tight end that you could use as this like fullback, wing back, slot receiver, motion type of a dude, and he's a good enough athlete, and I'll give him his props. He will stick his face in there to block. Like I will give that to him, man. Like he will do that. I like him as, again, like in those wing back alignments where you can run split zone where, say, he's aligned on the left side of the line of scrimmage. The whole offensive line is down blocking to the left and he's coming behind the line of scrimmage and he is blocking whatever end man is left there, whether it's a defensive end or a linebacker, whoever it is. Like, I like him in those situations because it gets to maximize a little bit of his movement skills too. But he's got to go to the right coach. And to be honest, I don't even know what the right coach is. He's got to go to an offense that sort of, allows his strengths to shine as a receiver, but also as that sort of smaller pound for pound blocker. But I'm not ready to give up on him. I'm still trying to figure out where his best spot is.
He made my midseason top 50 because I was like, this is something. I don't know what it is, but it's something. He didn't make he didn't stay up there, but I'm with you. He's going to make my top 100. That's in somewhere in the 80s, I think, when it's all said and done. I don't know what to do with him. Charles compared him, and I loved it. Compared him to Aaron Hernandez, and he was like, on field only.
Sure.
But just but just they have the same size. Even they timed actually similarly, which is kind of crazy. And just the funky running style, kind of like, what do you do with this? I know that's my reaction too. I was like, okay, like that. It really grew on me as he started explaining.
Good call.
I know.
Chuck. Good call.
I know. That was a winner. Because I really do like him. I want to see him in the NFL, and I want to see him at a forever home. I just want to see him at a good landing spot where I do, man. It's like, I don't want him adopted by an abusive family. I just want him to go to a nice forever home and be okay. That's all I want from Harold.
Somebody that understands him and will treat him right and give him a great future. Yes.
That's it. They're just going to work with him a little bit. That was great. You brought Ferguson as well. Another guy dropped off this year, but man, he had some talent. Shoot, he was on my short list going into the year. So I've kept an eye on him throughout the year. I've watched so much Oregon. I don't know how I can watch any more Oregon. But then I'm a little higher on Mason Taylor than you, but your qualms with him, I agree with, where I don't think he's an outstanding athlete, but a smooth, good athlete where he checks a lot of boxes as a player. But that's the thing, is like, well, what do you...
I feel
like
as
a
though
permanent secondary role, though. Like he's never going to be a featured player.
That's my thing. I have a conspiracy theory that I think, and I promise I'm not like going for your neck here on your own podcast. I feel bad saying this, but I think people are higher on Mason Taylor because they feel safe picking him. Because they're like, this guy's not going to bust. Like he is an NFL player.
Right.
I don't know what the ceiling is for, and that's why I'm judging him a little bit more on what I think is a lower ceiling. But I can understand when people watch Mason Taylor, it's just like comfort food, and they're just like, oh I know exactly what I'm getting here, and I think he's getting elevated in the rankings a little bit because of the
Yeah, it's funny. Like he is, though. He's like the classic quarterback's best friend, tight end. It's all
kind of,
You don't want him running. Yeah, it's like flat routes, stuff over the middle. He gets some simple yards after the catch. He can turn his shoulder. He can get upfield nice, or smoothly. That's what he is. I would say Arroyo, it's funny. It's how this works. It's middle of the season. I liked him, but I was like, I got a little lower. Then he tests all that stuff, or I shouldn't say tests, goes to the Senior Bowl, looks the part. But then studying him, I wrote up Cam Ward last week. So I was actually like saving clips and deep diving. I watched more Martinez, watched more Xavier Restrepo. And Arroyo, I was like, all right, I'm not going to ask him to block DNs every snap. Like he's receiving only, but we could work with this. He's got the frame to add even more weight. Maybe he gets to the NFL, gets some more want to where you're not the primary target. But man, he gets upfield in a hurry. They had some snaps of him isolated where he's just like an X receiver running a real route tree, running outs and comebacks and stuff. So Arroyo was one I was like, oh yeah, whatever. He's just getting some athleticism hype. And then I watched him. I was like, he's got more football player to him, some functional athleticism to him, where it's not just he looks the part, which is what usually gets people in trouble with tight ends. Hey, this guy's big, fast, and athletic. Let's draft him. And then the guy came and play football. Like Arroyo, like really grew on me, where I was like, you got more to you, especially as a receiver, and he's got some real juice to him. So yeah, him and Taylor are battling between 3 and 4 for me, just like you. But they're going to be, I think, both in my top 50 once all said and done. But man, Trevor,
fun class.
That was fun. That was fun. Thanks for diving deep with me here on Football 301 on running backs and tight ends. Not apparently they're not premium positions anymore, but they're premium to us. And they mean a lot to us. And that's why we can do 90 minutes on these guys, because it's a lot of fun to talk about such a juicy class. But we're going to close it out today. Charles and I will be back on Thursday. We'll be looking at some more around the league stuff, some questions we have for some teams. But I'm Nate Tice. You can find me at Nate_Tice on Twitter, Nate Tice on Blue Sky. Trevor, what are you working on over there at the 3 big letters? What how many interviews are you doing this week? Where can they find you on social media, Trevor?
Yes, all the social media platforms at Tampa Bay Trey. Staying busy around this time of year, obviously, but I hinted at a couple of things that I'm really looking forward to that we're doing sort of over the next month and a half leading up to the draft. One is doing more team-centric big board stuff, and so be sure to be on the lookout for all of that. If you're a PFF subscriber, I mean, you'll be able to see all of that stuff. You go on over to pff.com and then just doing a little bit more, breaking down these players into certain positions. And we're teasing that a little bit this year, and we're hoping to really bring it into our foundation of how we do scouting next year. And so really it's just the team-centric big boards, man. I'm so excited about that project that we have going on. And I'm hoping to nail a lot of prospect and team fits as those come out really over the next month or so.
No, I love that idea. Mock drafts have at first a slog. Then as it goes along, I actually start like using them as thought experiments, kind of going like, well, they wouldn't take this guy because of this. And you're basically extrapolating that idea though. Like, hey, this is why this guy's going here because this and that, and the whole big board. So I love that idea because it's very real. Like that's what happens. Some guys go later or higher in the draft and you're like, oh, because of team fit, I get that. Or because of position fit, I get that. So I love that idea. I love that thought process over there. So make sure to check that out once they guys have it all tidied up for you guys. Also, make sure to send in those mailbag questions, football301mailbag at yahoosports.com. We were going to get to 1 or 2 at the end of the show, but I go long. I can't help myself. And so we have to cut them. So my apologies to everybody, but we will be getting to some of those questions very soon. Also, you can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and we'll jump the line and answer that question as well. Subscribe to us, follow us, rate us, like I said, watch us on YouTube on the Yahoo Sports YouTube channel. Thank you to everyone behind the scenes for making this look and sound good. Thank you to Trevor for joining us. Thank you all for listening. See you guys next time.